Welcome to Command Shift Left, the podcast that helps you navigate the treacherous waters of the software development, ops, and security world while also diving into the hot current trends in the industry. Join myself, developer Philip, our co-host or Vice.
Hey audience!
As we battle through hilarious real-world stories, pro tips and hacks for navigating your way around developer security, learning about our Shift Left life, and life stories that have saved our ass.
As always, we have an awesome pleasure of having two amazing guests with us today, Dana and Kevin. In no particular order, how about we start with introducing Dana?
Hi, thanks so much for having me on this show. This is going to be a lot of fun. I'm Dana Lawson. I'm currently the CTO at Netlify. Been at other places such as GitHub, Heptio, InVision, New Relic. I love DevOps. I love SecOps. I love MLOps. Put ops on it and I'm there. I've been doing this about 25 years. And it's great to talk about some facts today.
Amazing. It's a pleasure having you. And Kevin?
So my name's Kevin, and I'm mostly known for helping people fall in love with CSS. And as I usually say, if I can't get you to fall in love with it, I'm hoping to at least help you be less frustrated with it, where I mostly focus on YouTube, and I have courses and other stuff like that too.
Kevin, I need help centering the div.
Yeah. The problem now is we have too many ways to do it.
Right. Which one is the best?
Yeah.
Of course. I have to say, Kevin, I love your YouTube channel. Really great content. Phillips is also another YouTube channel that I like, but yours is great too.
Thank you so much.
I think this would be a good spot to start before first fact, and that fact actually belongs to me. Or take it away. So my fact for this episode is that COBOL experts believe the real COBOL programmer shortage is just 5 to 10 years away. And this has kind of surprised me. I kind of felt that COBOL is already dead or should be just being gripping onto reality with its less remaining strength. But it turns out that it's still very much in use, very much dependent on, especially in the financial sector, in banks, etc., where they still run their mainframes on hardware and software that has originated in the 1970s. And now it's actually at risk, and people are actually worried that these systems are going to fail because we basically stopped training the engineers with learning COBOL. And gradually more and more people are retiring, and they're saying, I've had enough of this crap. I'm going to slip it off somewhere. So I'm kind of wondering what will happen. Will banks finally migrate into modern software? Will we start to see, I don't know, banks kind of building their core with Go and Rust or maybe Python or something else? Isn't COBOL 60 plus years old? So roughly it's originated at, I think, the 1970s, like with the rest of the software. Grace Hopper was one of the people that contributed to its establishment. So I wonder what you folks think about it, and then I have maybe a few more follow-up questions.
I'm going to tell you, I think that if somebody isn't starting or doing the AI to translate COBOL into a new language business, they're missing out. There's a huge cash cow waiting for y'all. In all seriousness, those are just chores, and I think some of the reason that there hasn't been this migration is that's a mega chore, not like going from a modern language to a modern language. This is archaic, and it's just like any kind of spoken language. If the people that are using it are no longer alive and we do not teach it, it is the exact same thing with these programming languages. But I'm going to tell you, I think somebody right now is utilizing an AI tool that is going to go and not reverse engineer it, but these systems aren't completely, that sophisticated. They're ledger databases, it's banking, it's financial information. It's been around for a minute. I've been using some cool AI tools to change, from feature flagging systems, doing, React upgrades, and then code changes. There's no reason that's not going to happen with this. So, I don't know. That's my opinion.
But there's a philosophical decision that you've made here. You're saying we should continue to maintain COBOL. We just need to layer some modern architecture on top of it.
No, not at all. I think you just let it let it go on to history like it should, and just start utilizing a tool set to get you off the system. It's time to rip the Band-Aid. No way. I say let it be in the history books.
I was just thinking, as if they're going to do it, it needs to be like the sooner the better, because as soon as those people do start retiring, that's going to be a nightmare. And if you're asking some juniors to come in and try and figure it out, even if you are using an AI tool or something to be able to help you with the migration, like it just needs one mistake, especially like you're talking about probably billions of dollars in potential things. If you're dealing with the financial industry and everything, like you can't make a mistake in migrating those over. It's going to be interesting to see what solutions come up there.
I'm saying scrap it. I mean, from the developer's advocacy perspective, there's one journey of trying to learn it, but who the hell is documenting all of this? Like, it's probably like written on manuscripts. God knows, maybe it's written on stone. It's so old for me that I don't know. Who's going to learn that?
So what does this mean for, like, we're thinking about training the next generation of engineers? So are we saying, just learn only the new stuff, don't do any backward compatibility? Because we do have the concept of backward compatibility into the software that we're building, right? When we deliver a new version, we do want it to work with the old one. We do want to enable our customers to have a time period where they can adjust. Are we saying, this is just for the software? The engineers, they need to only look forward.
Realistically, I think we should adjust to the changes. It's like with iPhones. At some point, you have an old iPhone. They just stop supporting the operating system, and then people have to learn to use the new one and move on. And it's like that's maybe the same concept that we should have with our of really old programming languages. Don't you guys think?
I think so. I think you got to continue to teach the fundamentals. Like I had to learn the OSI model. Like y'all got to learn it too. That stuff still exists. There is a actual physical foundation of how bytes and bits transmit and how we do computer programming, computer science. So I think there's always that foundational. But I think it's a waste of time to teach some archaic languages that aren't going to enable people to build modern apps, because you're not going to. Again, it's good to learn history, and apply some of that learning, but I think you got to make new programmers and people have really long-lived careers, and you want to teach them the programming languages that are going to continue to evolve. And it's an interesting space right now because the iteration of new language, especially in the front end space, is like, I won't say languages, but frameworks, is every 2 years, every 2 to 3 years, there's some new hotness, and we've talked about Angular and React and TypeScript, but JavaScript. And again, I think that there's this commonality of modern programming languages that will continue to evolve, but teaching the old stuff, I don't know. I want to look forward and again, have that rooted maybe in the history books, but not really apply that. We're advancing humans. We're not setting them back. That, I don't know. Maybe I'm a futurist.
I think it's such a niche area for people to, and like, if you're going, say you're learning all of this, like, how many people would learn it if you're saying we should actively be teaching this, that are actually going to be able to apply what they're learning? Like, it's so small, and like maybe for that subset it's really useful, and maybe because there's nobody doing it, so you're in demand or whatever. But like, I just think that I think it's not worth training people in that in those archaic ones that aren't being updated, that aren't being used, that are just these leftovers that are there. I think it's a bit of a waste of resources for the like, you could be using that time to teach other stuff that's more important and more useful for the students.
It's like asking Kevin to position a div using absolute positioning.
How about maybe like software anthropology or software historians or archaeologists, like someone to carry the flame, or someone that you can consult when you find like a buried server that's still running a system that we didn't know is still alive, like a nuclear reactor or something like that. There's bound to be some technology that is meant to be run long term, and we are not even necessarily aware that we need to migrate.
Let me give you a fun fact. Okay, I did this really weird job for a hot minute at the National Enrichment Facility that was built in the United States, first time since 1973. And so this technology was regulated by the NRC, right? Government Technology, Nuclear Regulatory Committee. We literally had a piece of software that was running on a DEC Alpha. Now, you're probably like, hey, I have never even heard of that. That's good because that's how old it is. It's an old computer that is running in a closet, and hopefully they're off of that. It's been a few years, so hopefully they're off of it. But this was recent, y'all. This wasn't that long ago. And so I think, again, like those things are going to stop and they're going to go, and we have to get off those systems.
I had a friend who used to work at an insurance company, and they had a server running, and they had some like life insurance stuff that was on it. And the cost of migrating it would have been really high, and there's not a lot of people that were still like in that system. But he was telling me how they're just basically like waiting to shut, like, for the last few people to, kick the bucket so they could actually like close, shut down all the stuff that it was running, just because like the cost of running it was high, but it was cheaper just to let that sort of sit in the closet, do its thing until they had, whatever people were left on that were done, just so to say. And it's like, just let it do its course and then, move on.
So I guess we'll have to wait and see where we end up. But for now, I think it's the perfect moment to move to our second fact. And that one belongs to Dana. Take it away.
All right. So we're talking some old tech today, y'all. So like I said, I've been in tech for 25 years. And my fun fact is, when will the cutover happen from IPv4 to IPv6? As of May 2024, Google's statistics show IPv6 available of its global user base around 41 to 46%, depending on the day of the week, greater on weekends. And adoption is even more uneven across different countries and internet service providers. Now, IPv6 came out as a protocol in 1995, and it was like, this will be the thing, because we know the limitations of 4 means we're going to run out of internet addresses on the internet. Here's the thing. The cutover will basically happen forever. There is no prediction right now when it will be done, because you can't do it live. And so there are now new IPv6 data centers. The hardware, this is one where you are stuck on the hardware, have to be upgraded so that you can have those in line. And some of the reasons for moving over just aren't compelling. They're just not compelling to move over anymore. And we haven't run out of addresses yet. And again, because of the adoption is so uneven, North America and Western countries are continuing to move over. But there is a lot of the internet happening and emerging from sub-Saharan Africa and Southeast Asia, where they don't have the infrastructure to be able to make those cuts. So I don't know. Fun fact, will it ever happen? Right now, the experts say they don't know.
What will happen with the devices that only support IPv4?
Well, until there's a killer app, nobody's going to cut over, right? Until there's a killer IPv6 app, who is going to go and say, let's all make sure that these applications only run on this protocol? Nobody's going to do it. Nobody's building for it. And until that happens, we're going to continuously be in this wait. And I think it's going to be, more like you could tell people to go do something, but until you really have to have it happen, you're going to have to force it. It's going to have to start with the cloud vendors. It's going to have to start with the infrastructure to really make that cut. I, as a technologist, have been getting threatened for years. The internet's running out of addresses. And you got to make IPv6 applications. And guess what? I think I've never done it. I think I've done it twice when I was running in colos and I had control over it. But everything's so cloud native. You got to have AWS, Google, Amazon, etc. really force these changes. And again, make a good migration path. We talked about the OSI model. Like, you can't just go mess around with layer 3. You just can't. So we're going to have to ensure that there's a better way to do this cutover and make it a reason for it to really progress. But here we are since 1995, and the push to really push IPv6 happened on IPv6 Day, June 2012, and we are now, there's a day for it, y'all. I didn't know that. They tried to hype this up so much. Yeah, they're trying to hype it up so much. 2012, they're like, we're going to get the internet to cut over. We'll make a day. Y'all just learned that fun fact that there's an IPv6 day. It's sometime in June. We must have passed it, y'all. But since 2012, that push has been happening, and it's now 2024. So I'm kind of with the experts. I don't know. I don't think it's ever going to happen.
I think it will be kind of like with these isolated tribes that you have, like, that are still living like they're hunter-gatherers, still in their corner of the world. So we'll still have like small networks behind NAT servers that have do their translation for them, but they still think that everything is IPv4. There are some pushes, I think, that are happening. AWS recently increased the cost for having an IPv4 static address. So that's kind of market trying to correct itself. In general, I think this is a good callback to other episodes that we had. We had the episode where we discussed that change with AWS, and we also had the episode where we discussed how Vint Cerf actually decided to make IPv4 32-bit and not bigger address space. If you want to know those facts, go and listen to our other episodes. And I don't know if it's that bad if we'll have these reservations of small IPv4 communities that will stick with us forever, that and a little bit of COBOL, and you can go stroll around the internet and reminisce how like humanity was in its earlier days.
But surely most people usually tend to lean to following methods and ways that are more efficient in technology, right? And IPv6 is more efficient. So surely
it's efficient for the system as a whole, but for you just connecting to the internet?
I was about to say, I think like so many people they just keep doing what they've been doing and they don't even think about it. So like, I see this with what I do, but I think it's any space, any tech, like most people aren't paying attention to these changes that are going on. They're just like, this is whatever I've been doing. And I think, like you said, with the AWS changing the price, that's something that all of a sudden puts the market pressure on, makes people go, oh, maybe I need to look into this and learn about it. Because if that doesn't happen and there's no external pressure to make a change in the processes and stuff like that, people just won't do it.
Maybe we can make this like a cultural thing, like with stopping to use plastic straws. Like, this is the trend now. If you want to be IP woke, you have to switch to IPv6. Otherwise, you're not culturally aware. You're not connected.
But there's not even again, to the end users and even for programmers, there's not a ton of benefits. There isn't really a measurable increase of security by moving over. NATs don't increase latency to the degree that anybody cares. And it's going to be fun to hear about the next spec because I love talking about website speed. But again, I think that as engineers, we I don't know, I obsess about it. I'm like, oh my gosh, there's so many milliseconds. But like, I don't know, is it? And so I think that there's a whole bunch of loose benefits for moving over, but there isn't that hardcore one. And really the only really message has been is like, the internet's going to run out of addresses. And so I don't know, I think that Amazon is doing something to incentivize, but I also think Amazon is smart about how to make money. And, it's like a good one to be like, well, they're going to be out of security compliance and, it's probably going to need to start really pushing people. So we'll charge more. That's a good money squeeze. If they went and looked at their KPIs, they're probably like, hey, 70% of our customers haven't moved over. I'm like, whoever that Amazon leader is, very smart putting the squeeze on us. But I do think it's going to push. There needs to be a financial squeeze to get people to push. There has to be incentive or stick. I don't know, so like, bully for them, but I don't know. It's going to be interesting. I just don't think there's a ton of benefits to end user. It's more for us going and thinking about scale and the future apps. That's what I think about. How can we really have developers enabled to explode the internet to even links we never expected? So, let's make sure that we don't run out of IP addresses.
I think it's the best financial squeeze. It's the financial squeeze where you can also claim the moral high ground. I'm not doing this for the money. It's for the good of the internet.
For the good of the internet.
Yeah, realistically, when you mentioned the straws, I just imagined a bunch of woke activists raiding my house, checking if I'm using IPv4. I don't know.
They're going to name and shame you.
Another option is religion. Like, have you heard the message of our God and Savior, IPv6? You have to... just give us a couple of minutes to tell you about our Lord and Savior. And coming to being saved, I think we should be saved from this story by moving to the next one. And that is the fact that will come from Philip. Philip, take it away.
So my fact for this episode is about internet speed. And did you guys know that website load times should happen within 2 seconds? And it takes 0.9 of a second for a user to be able to scan a website,
and form their own opinion about it, whether they like it or not. And this is, I guess, very tailored towards marketing and very tailored towards how people can see things and how quickly they understand things and how conscious we should be about maybe how much attention we put into the way we design websites. Now, I've got some facts here in regards to website speed. And in general, 47% of users expect websites to load in less than 2 seconds. So to us, that sounds really fast. And realistically, now thinking about it, with the decreased attention span that we have because of all the different social media platforms, I can see that really being true. Now, if your website takes longer than 2 seconds to load, visitors get very easily frustrated, and they probably won't stick around. And there was a study that was conducted by Deloitte and commissioned by Google, which found that decreasing a website's load time by a mere 1/10 of a second, which to us is basically nothing. It's like we wouldn't even notice it realistically. But supposedly that 1/10 of a second led to a considerable increase in conversion rates on websites like retail, on websites like travel sites and buying holidays, and so on and so forth. So the question I want to kind of throw out to you guys today is, do you think that we should be putting more pressure onto engineers to think about speed, latency, and performance of the apps that we design, and specifically websites?
I think that's like a lot in that question to unpack, just because there's different ways of looking at it too, right? Like I could make something that works really well on my computer that's hardwired, that's like a high-end computer, and then you're also worried about you need it to be fast on somebody who's on a crappy internet connection on their cell phone, or that's in other parts of the world where they don't have great internet and all of that. And I think if you're like, I think the pressure should just be on make it fast for everybody and good for everybody. And it's just a better user experience. And then that's just a good thing. Like, obviously, if you're running a company that's reliant on conversion rates and you have your e-commerce store or something like that, and you see impacts, that's a good thing. And you want people to stick around. But yeah, I think there's been so much, I don't know, the direction of the web these days has moved into a lot of really more complicated things going on. There's all this extra weight in them that doesn't necessarily need to be there, that doesn't always benefit the user. Sometimes it's just because it's easier for us as a developer. And I just think that the user experience should always be what's top of mind or front of mind.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, I work at Netlify. It is a front-end web development platform with its own global CDN network. And I think about caching all day. I mean, seriously, like they're like, what are you thinking about? I'm like, probably caching. Like 9 times out of the day it is. And I think about that experience and coming in and what you're thinking about, Kevin, as well, is really, how are devices, application, websites going to manifest globally? How's the speed of transmission? Because we do have the attention span of goldfish. I mean, goodness gracious. I think it all started with like gaming, and I have kids. I don't know if any of y'all have kids, but I used to play my son in Halo back in the day. He turned it on so fast. I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't keep up. You're going to make me throw up. And that hand-eye coordination and that attention, it all is becoming supercharged. And I do believe that maybe we don't notice, but the human ability from eye to brain and that connection probably are going to change that. So I do feel like we're probably at the best we can ever get at optimizing those sites. I mean, maybe a little bit more, but I think, again, it's more about that user and that experience and try to make it great all the time. And so that's where I sit and ruminate on caching and thinking about applications and this whole narrative that's happening around the web community be about local first and signals and these frameworks that, again, making it more complicated for us all. But that end user is really trying to balance out, well, how do we run these on these devices? How do we hold that on the edge? And the edge is so subjective, but I don't know. I think it's really interesting. And I think all devs should be worried about performance because at this point in time, anything that you're probably building is probably a commodity in the next 4 months or 6. If you thought about it, 1 billion other people thought about it. So our mission to make development more accessible to every human on this planet, I guess I have a dream of everybody being a developer. I don't know. I'm cool with that. Has happened. And so you have to think about that performance and really ensuring that there's nothing that's going to not help you compete. And so that's just being a good citizen, because you'd have a great idea. But if you are 0.9 seconds of not manifesting great idea, I'm on to the next great idea that somebody already thought of right there standing next to you.
But now knowing that 1/10 of a second can change someone's opinion so quickly, won't that make you think a little more about caching now?
It is. Thanks for making me even more obsessed about caching. But seriously, it's interesting. I'm more concerned. I would love to see a study to say, like, really, where are we at physiologically versus like try to push forever? Because again, our meat bodies have limitations, unlike the internet. Like we can keep pushing forever, but physically speaking, maybe, I don't know. I'm getting older. I don't mind having a good little like waiting. I'll say, like, you put a game, I'll probably wait for a few minutes to play that damn game. I'm cool with that. I don't know.
A cool feature in the Netlify build. Like, while you're waiting for it to build, gives you a little game.
You can play a game. Yeah, because
I'm also getting old, so
you're like, okay.
I will say that I think that the optimizations that we see with this are also part of the optimizations that are within people. So a book that I really like is Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman. And one of the points there is that we ourselves are a microservice-oriented system. We have at least 2 different microservices, and one of them is optimized for reacting quickly to things. So probably that 0.9 second reaction time is by that optimized system and not your highly cognitive system that you used to think of as yourself, which in the book they call System 2, the slower system. So in System 1, I think maybe that's part of the generational gap. That's a trained system. So doesn't have all your full cognitive capabilities, but it's been optimized by how you trained yourself, essentially. And I'm guessing with the younger generations, they have more optimization for consuming digital content. I think it's also true for us old fogies, more than our parents, but I guess optimization will carry us for a while. Another thing I wanted to note here is that, Dana, you're basically kind of like that meme, the meme with, he's probably thinking about other women or other people, and it's just caching all.
It literally is just caching. One day, I don't know. One day when I'm out of this like internet game, which will be never, because I love it. But no, that's funny. I'm that meme. I'm going to update that meme with me. It'll just be me looking at me saying caching.
Lastly, I'd add that I think that maybe a lot of this kind of annoying optimization that needs to be done, maybe that can be delegated to specific vendors. So Netlify, I know you're with the CDN, you're putting a lot of effort into this. With Permit, we try to optimize on the authorization layer, so you don't have to care about this. We'll give you that sub 10 milliseconds, whatever it is that you need to do, so you can think about your software instead of your authorization layer. And maybe more vendors kind of adopt this. Maybe in like a couple of years, people building software on top will be able to just not think about this. Though on the other end, we're seeing trends like languages like Rust and Go are becoming more prominent, which are actually making developers take a more active role in this. So I don't know, maybe it's a back and forth kind of pendulum thing. Maybe it's a balance point thing. I guess like before, we'll have to wait and see.
We'll have to wait and see. And I think this is the perfect time to move on to our final fact. And that fact is by Kevin. Kevin, take it away.
My fact for this week is that people like to complain about inconsistencies between browsers today. And I know this because on my channel, people are always complaining in my comments. But I also think most people don't realize how good they actually have it. And so for one of the examples that I have is just for when the CSS first actually became a thing. The spec for it was actually very vague in certain parts. And worse, a lot of browsers also ignored the official spec and just did things the way they wanted to do them. One of the more famous examples of this was Internet Explorer 5 actually treated the box model differently than other browsers of the time. So if you declared a width and padding, the padding would be included in the width, whereas the other browsers wouldn't. You'd think, yes, there's box sizing border box, which we have today. That's sort of how Internet Explorer was doing it. But back then we didn't have a box sizing property, so you couldn't actually change that. So one browser would do it one way, the other browser would do it the other way, and you didn't really have a solution to that. There was a really hacky thing that I don't remember anymore that could sort of fix things for that. But yeah, that was like the famous example. And So what actually ended up happening, or actually it wasn't only Internet Explorer freelancing, it was all the browsers freelancing a little bit, and partially because the spec was vague. So because they were so inconsistent and there was a lot of bugs in them, there was actually a web standards project for CSS that was created. And it's actually really similar to the current interop project that's running now to try and get all the consistencies. They went through the different browsers, found the different inconsistencies between them, to say, like, these are different things people are doing wrong. Let's try and get them all following the spec. And actually, at the time, everybody liked saying Internet Explorer was problematic and Netscape was the good browser, but Netscape actually had so many issues that they didn't even bother to document them because there was too many, and they didn't want to waste their time on that. So yeah, I just, looking back at the early days of the web, and talking about COBOL and other stuff too, people, like to complain, but it's a lot better now than it used to be.
But we still have inconsistencies, right? You still have to make sure that whatever kind of styling you're doing for a specific, I don't know, is a component, whatever you're designing in the web, you still have to be a little on edge when it comes to, well, will this definitely work in this browser? Because sometimes for some reason, I like to look at the compatibility list of things that are new and available, and it's not always full. There's still things that are missing, and it still hasn't been done.
There's different ways of looking at that. I think part of the reason we have that now, more so, there are some inconsistencies, but most of them are smaller. When it's like they both work, but they work differently, it's rare, and that's what the Interop project is for, where all the browsers get together to try and make sure everything's working, and they have tons of tests to test it all. But if it's actually, the issue now, I think, is more we have all these new features, and not all the browsers have added them yet, which is very different. Or they're in different stages of adding it. Maybe it's behind a flag here or something like that. Part of it, I think, is, can it be a progressive enhancement? Is it something that adds to the site but won't break the experience if it doesn't work? Then start using it today. Who cares? Right? The new people that are on the better or a newer browser get a better experience. The people that aren't on a newer browser still get a working website. Everything's fine. If it's something that will break your site, if it doesn't work, well, then you have to look at, is how much of your audience is actually using what, look at your own analytics and analyze for your own audience to decide if it's something you could actually use now, or you might have to wait a little while, which sucks. And I do agree. Like, I like talking about modern stuff as much as possible. And I'm playing with it, and I realize sometimes waiting to use a new thing isn't the best, but it's where we are sometimes.
I have to say, I'm completely on with Kevin on the emotion around this this fact. Like, today is so much better than what it used to be. Really, it was ridiculous. Thinking even a little further back, like IE4 in history, like most companies at that time just said, "Oh, there's just Internet Explorer. Fuck everything else. We're not going to support the other browsers." And every other site you'd go into would just break and give you the middle finger. And as a developer, you had like no tools, like not even jQuery. Like, you just had to write. I wrote pure VB script, which I was like as a kid, I thought, oh, this is so great. It's like Visual Basic. Just put it into the web and it will work everywhere. But it was crap. We didn't have any tools. We were just cobbling things with mud and stone, essentially. And so today is so much better. But if you do want like an intermediate solution, like, there's an answer. It's a crappy answer, but it's called polyfill. Like, wrap everything in a function, have your JavaScript compiler, transpiler, generate more code to bridge the gap for you. It's bloated. It will bloat up your app, but it's a lot less bloated than it used to be.
Oh, yeah, totally. I mean, I remember when I used to write JavaScript or to change JavaScript. Y'all all done it. Like, don't tell me you haven't. I'm like, oh, man, it don't work on that one browser. I'm just like, it's fine. You watch the dome kind of blink. You're like, it's fine. Of course, this was a while ago. Don't tell me I'm the only one that's done that. Listen, I'm a terrible front-end programmer. That's why I was like, put me out. You don't do that. But it was because of interoperability. We all did it because you didn't have the ability to do it once, and you're like trying to maintain the sites, and you're like, oh, wait, that version is for, Internet Explorer 8. This version's for this. No way, man. I'm like, JavaScript on top of JavaScript. That shit's going to work. And, it's so much better. But I think also, it's interesting because you do want to continue to have the independent, companies and open source projects be able to advance browser technology. You do. And it's tough because depending upon who, what, and where, there's going to be some wants and needs to make it their own sweet stuff. But I do think the program is the right one. That's why we brought up like all these other Web3 standards, cloud native, interoperability. There's a reason that these functions and systems are put in place so that we hopefully can have good end user experiences. But it's a tough one. We don't have the virtual testing farms that we used to. I don't know about y'all, but I would have to remote in to a lab and have my app really run. This was before we had runners and CI/CD. You'd have to remote it to the lab and you'd have to like deploy this crazy website app and you'd have to go and tell all these people, okay, go down the checklist. It is so much better and I'm here for it. I still think though, I'm not going to ever program for Safari first. So no hate, but I mean, go look at the survey. They're lagging and there's a reason because it's a terrible browser. But one day if these standards get there, I won't even have to worry about that. Maybe Safari will just catch up.
I will say they are doing a lot better than they had been. The last year or two, they've, I think, realized and they've put some resources into that to try and not be lagging so far behind. They got a way to go, but yeah, for sure. Yeah.
You brought up a very important point of how things improved. Like you used to have to travel physically to another place to be able to upload a version to a server. That I completely forgot about that crap, and remembering it now, it sounds so ridiculous having to physically go somewhere to write software. That's so yeah. We need to be there. Maybe alongside IPv6 Day, we also need Modern Software Appreciation Day. But we don't know. We forgot how good we got it.
That's right.
I do have a little bonus fact to go along with this, just because when they did the web standards project for CSS, they had, and this was like an independent thing, it was just people that wanted to make sure that everything was actually standardized and following the CSS spec. And so the members of the web standards project CSS action committee called themselves the CSS Samurai. And I was just reading that and I was just like, I had to pause and just like look at that and I'm like, really?
I'm not surprised. I mean, haven't we had like the PayPal Mafia? We've had, what else do we have out there? I don't know. There's all these tech gangs. So you got to have your unique moniker, CSS Samurai. Kevin, what year was that they came up? Do you know what year that they came up with that? It feels so like 90s hackerish, be like, or maybe even like early 2000s.
I don't know if it has a year on.
As Kevin is looking that up, maybe that is the new hype that we're going to have. We should start creating tech mafias and little gangs of things that we do and the little rules that we break. Will make technology and programming a little bit more exciting, maybe.
And then we can actually push some culture into this. Like, people will be, what are you doing? No, you have to put it on IPv6. Oh no, the Samurai Ninja of IPv6 something like that. Gotcha. No, we gotta...
Yeah, you nailed it though. It was 98, 99 time frame. So like, yeah.
I felt it. I felt like there was a trench coat behind this name.
Then I think you have a future in being a software historian. You've got a knack for it.
I would love it. Like, I'm going to tell you, I got some crazy stories. Like, I should have worn, because we were talking Netscape. I have some Netscape shirts that are pretty like funny, hating on Microsoft and the browser wars. And when I worked at GitHub, that was owned by Microsoft at the time. I loved wearing those shirts. It's like, it was just really too funny. But no, I'd love to be a historian. Maybe that's my future gig. Tech historian. I don't know.
We'll have to wait and see. And dear audience, if you want to wait and see more things, you should listen to another episode. Kevin, Dana, thank you very much for joining us.
I think this is the perfect time to wrap up the show. If you liked this podcast, tell your friends about it. If you didn't like it, tell your enemies about it.